Hello, Mixtresses and Mixters. This is Mixtress Ray. You're watching Mixtress Video, and today, thanks to a comment from Tammy Pie, who suggested that I do a comparison between Tarot of Vampires and Ludy Lescot. This is funny because I actually, when I first got Ludy Lescot, I wanted to do a comparison of these two because in my mind, thanks again to Wendy who made these beautiful bags for me. Just a coincidence that when she sent me these two bags, she sent this one specifically for my Tarot of Vampires, but she sent me this one just as a little bonus. And I just decided I wanted to use it for Ludy Lescot. So it just happened to be that they not only do the decks match in this video, but the bags match too. I think I'll leave them as a little background too. Okay, cool. So I actually, when I first got Ludy Lescot, I did a comparison of these two decks for myself. Like, I don't know if I started filming it or not. I can't remember, but I remember getting like partway through flipping through these two decks together and I did not like the results. But I think I'm going to feel differently now because I have bonded with this deck now to a certain extent. And both of these decks I've been using pretty frequently in the last couple of months. These two and my Telesma Tarot are like the only ones that I've been using lately. Anyway, so both of these decks, like if you are actually watching this video because you're trying to decide between them, it is no contest that you like that. In my opinion, Tarot of Vampires is the one to go with because it is the one that is more well-rounded, more well thought out, and it is also the one that's in print. That being said, they're totally different vibes. But also let's just talk about for a second like the things that these decks have in common. They're both like vampire storylines. They're both like set in New Orleans, I would say. This one more obviously, Ludy Lescot more obviously, Tarot of Vampires. It could be somewhere other than New Orleans, but like that's just the place for vampire stories in my opinion. So let's get into it. I do think this is somewhat of an unfair comparison because what you're dealing with Tarot of Vampires is a lot of symbolism and thoughtfulness. However, I would say that the art, as far as like how good the art is, these are both really well done decks. The themes are very different, I would say, besides just being like vampire New Orleans vibe. Beyond that, with Tarot of Vampires, you have a very like spiritual, esoteric world. Like you could, like if you really wanted to, you could create a religion surrounding the world of Tarot of Vampires. Whereas with Ludy Lescot, I do think it's a well thought out world, but it's like a dystopia. It's like some Handmaid's Tale bullshit in Ludy Lescot. This could be the same person. I will say the portrayal of boobs is much more realistic in Ludy Lescot. Whereas it's very like, those don't look like boobs really look. Or maybe just the vampires in Tarot of Vampires, the vampire women, are possibly just enhanced in the boob region. Both have good card backs. I thought about this after I made my last video on Ludy Lescot, but like the backs of the cards kind of tell you the story of Ludy Lescot, in my opinion. Like, the whole idea of, I mean, the entire deck is based on relationships between men and women, essentially, in a very misogynistic, patriarchal society, but it's about the heteronormative romantic relationships between men and women. And that's what you see on the back of the card. And in fact, like, I was thinking about it, like, Ludy Lescot not only doesn't pass the Bechdel test, if you were to apply that to a tarot deck, not only does it not pass the Bechdel test, and if you haven't heard of that, I'll explain it really quickly. It is a way to typically test, you would normally use it when you're talking about TV and movies. There needs to be, to pass the Bechdel test, there needs to be two female characters, two named female characters that talk to each other about something other than a man. And you would be surprised, if you've never heard of that, you might be surprised that most TV and movies do not pass the Bechdel test. It's gotten better, but like Ludy Lescot, like, there aren't any women interacting with each other. There aren't any men interacting with each other either. It's only the relationship between men and women in Ludy Lescot, which is another realization that I made about Ludy Lescot after I filmed my last video. These decks aren't as dissimilar as you might think. And it would be, you know, the same person that might have both of these decks, you know? Goth children might have both of these decks. But again, if you are watching this and you don't have either of them and you are thinking about getting them both, or you ultimately decide you want Ludy Lescot because it is out of print, don't feel guilty about buying a knockoff. That's what mine is. It's out of print, so you don't have to feel bad about it. And you can find it. I got it from an Etsy shop. Didn't even come with a box. But I'm sure there are different versions of a knockoff out there. And the color reproduction is pretty nice. It's a little bit more saturated than like the real version of Ludy Lescot. And the backs are a little different. Like, there's some words, some phrases in Latin around the border of the original. Ace of Wands. It's interesting because I don't really, like I said in my last video, I don't necessarily read Ludy Lescot like a regular tarot sometimes. So like the fact that this is Two of Wands was actually just like a little jarring for me there for a second. Like, what? Really? I guess so. Because it's hard to read Ludy Lescot in a traditional way, in my opinion. Because it's very much outside, I don't know, the themes in the tarot deck in general are consistent with the world of Ludy Lescot. But as far as just like, you know, whenever you're looking at a Six of Wands, like, you have to really think about it. Like, how does this relate to the Six of Wands within the context of this particular deck? It's, you know, like doing a spread with Ludy Lescot is a process. Like, you have to be willing to sit and contemplate and journal and all that shit, in my opinion anyway. But a lot of low scarabeo decks have that like sort of vibe of like, this is a different interpretation, you know? And that's what's great about tarot, right? It's not all the same. Both feature women being weird in a cemetery for 9 of Wands. Put these cards out of the way. Knights. I'm putting them in the elemental order as far as like the thought, the elements. Knights being fire, queens being water, princes being air, and then daughters being earth, of course. Wait, these don't go together though. What did I do? Oh, I just put these in the wrong order. Queen should be next. Okay. Cups, grails, chalices, whatever. This is interesting. I had a commenter recently, sorry, I forgot your name, that mentioned that they thought that the Knight of Cups, or I think it's the Page. I think it's the Page. The Page of Cups is the same as the guy in the Two of Cups here, and I think she might be right. Or they might be right. Sorry, I default to she. Gender-wise, I just like automatically think everyone is she. I need to try to like retrain myself to say they. It's interesting. I actually like looking at these together. I could almost see that this is the same person, but in a different context. Almost, if that makes sense. I don't know. I can see these decks maybe even being interesting to use together. I've never really done that as far as like, you know, picking pairings that make sense together or anything like that. But that might be an interesting thing to start trying to do. See how different decks can inform each other. Instead of maybe, I don't know, does anybody do that? Let me know in the comments. Like maybe instead of picking like a card of the day, I could pick 2 cards per day and choose, you know, from 2 different decks. Similar feelings here because I feel like with the Tarot Vampyres 10 of Cups, like she's choosing to be satiated and satisfied within herself alone. And in Ludy Lescot, she's choosing to be satisfied with herself alone with her child. So it's like, I see this as sort of like single mother and her child against the world. And this, I see someone that's choosing to be alone and be totally self-satisfied in that. Knight. Oh, I did it again. No, I didn't. Yes, I did. How many times did I do that? I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully I'll catch it every time. Queen. Both hot princes. Okay, here's that guy. Yeah, I do think it's the same guy as the guy in the Two of Cups, but also something that I noticed when looking back at the video, and then someone pointed out in the comment, like, what is this hand back there? I didn't notice that in my last video whenever I was showing this card. All right, let's move these out of the way. See, this could be the same person. Okay, thank you, Tammy Pie, for making me do this, because I thought I didn't want to do it because I tried to do it when I first got Ludy Lescot and I didn't like it. This could be the same person. Just different context. This is someone that, in Ludy Lescot, this is someone that does not have any control over their situation. And here, in Tarot Vampires, she has complete control. That's how I see that anyway. Also here, women that are bleeding in a cemetery, but in Tarot of Vampires, she's in control. And in Ludy Lescot, I mean, we get the idea that she did this herself. She did this to herself, but it's not out of control. It's out of, you know, just total despondent despair. I don't really get this one. He's like, but wait, come back. I want to be on that ship. I've got my swords. I'm ready to go. Like, what? What is that? I mean, same image, really. These could also be the same person. I mean, obviously they look very different, but you know what I mean. Spiritually, they could be the same person. Same here. I wonder if, like, one of these was somewhat influenced by the other. I don't know when Ludy Lescot was created. Can I find out that information right now? No, I cannot. Not without, like, getting up and pausing the video and all that shit. But I know that Tarot of Vampires came out in, like, 2010, 2011, somewhere around there. 2012. It's at least 10 to 12 years old. And Ludy Lescot is probably about the same. Maybe even a couple years older than Tarot Vampires. These two people kind of look like sisters to me. One of them is on top of her shit, and one of them is not. This guy's just like a little too aggro for me. Again, I feel like I'm looking at the same person almost. These decks apparently go together better than I thought. Like, I could see that this is in the same room. Like, this guy's like looking over his shoulder at this chick like, what are you doing posing with that thread? Like, girl, get to work. Oh my god. This is just, I really kind of like pet peeve 4 of Pentacles. Whenever you see somebody just like standing around counting their money or looking like they're hoarding their money. Like, I get that that's an interpretation of 4 of Pentacles, but I don't like it to be the only interpretation that the imagery seems, that the imagery is forcing you to contend with. I don't like that being the only possibility of interpretation based on how rigid the artwork looks. Does that make sense? That's a lot of words. It's a lot of emotions for safe. Yeah. Look at this little guy. I want this little guy in my life. So we recently had to send our oldest dog to college, and the dog that we have left, Z, he's pretty old. He's 13. So my mom and one of my friends has been sort of not really pressuring, but sort of like encouraging me to get a new dog, and to have as a buffer is what my mom calls it. You know, get a young dog for the transition, because I don't really want to have 2 dogs at once anymore, but it's going to be very sad when Z decides to go to college. You know what I mean? Yeah, like, I feel like these decks could inform each other. For the most part, I feel like using Ludy Lescot as a supplement to Tarot of Vampires could possibly inform the world of Tarot of Vampires a little bit. It could add another layer to it, you know? Because I see the women in Tarot of Vampires as having much more agency. So when I'm looking at, you know, like an image from Ludy Lescot where I feel like all I'm getting is subservience to men and, you know, that reluctant acquiescence to men and all that shit that I've been talking about in my Ludy Lescot videos recently, I can look to the Tarot of Vampires equivalent, and I can see in many cases a woman that's much more in control of her reality. That could be the same woman in my mind. I don't know. I love both of these. The only thing about the Nine of Skulls in Tarot Vampires is I wish there was a bird. I mean, there could be just like a crow just like perched on this little cross here. Or a bird in her hand instead of a rose, you know? Just saying. You guys, I ordered Ian Daniels' Fairy Oracle deck. It shipped a couple days ago, so it's coming from the UK though, so it'll probably take a while, but I'm pretty excited to work with that because it seems like this almost the same level of attention to detail that he put into Tarot of Vampires. It seems like he put that same thoughtfulness into his Oracle deck. And hey, fairies and vampires, those are just like, I used to sign my letters whenever I was a teenage goth. Vampires and fairies. Or I would call myself the vampire fairy, you know, that kind of thing. So I love that his 2 decks are a vampire deck and a fairy deck. And it was really reasonably priced too. I mean, I'm sure I'll show it to you guys whenever I get it. See, I mean, yeah, it's definitely, but I could see this as being the same person. This is actually more fun than I thought it was going to be. These comparisons. Cool, cool, cool. So if you, for some reason, are watching this video because you're trying to decide between these two, get Tarot Vampires. You know, Ludy Lescot is challenging. It really is. Plus, it's out of print, so that makes it challenging to get and then challenging to work with once you get it. So, yeah. But I do like them both, and now I'm actually curious to try them together whenever I'm done working with Telesma. But I'm having a lot of fun with Telesma right now. I'm using it. I'm doing a daily card draw from it, and then also a daily card draw from Secret Dakini / Tantric Dakini. It is called both. And then my card of the month is 3 of Cups, so I just have it set up over here as well. And one of the reasons why I put Tarot of Vampires up is I don't really like the 3 of Cups and Tarot of Vampires, and since I always put my monthly card on my stand for like the entire month, I have to like the card that I'm looking at. And I mean, just look at this. How amazing is every fucking image in Telesma Tarot. Okay, sorry. I'm not trying to sell you guys shit. But I am showing off products that you can find on the internet, so I guess I am trying to sell you shit. Anyway, shutting up now. Thanks for listening. Love you guys. Bye, 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 bye. Ciao.